Back in the day of early Dungeons and Dragons, where most adventures were about creating a character, going to the dungeon, killing monsters, getting treasure, and coming back to town, characters lived in a very kind of like isolated environment. Usually because the scope wasn't much about creating a story, a campaign, a bunch of epic events that would drive the life of these characters. And in fact, most people consider characters to be basically disposable. They will create a character and the character would die in the middle of combat. Yeah, okay, whatever, died in the dungeon, go ahead, create a new one and continue on. So there was this attitude that these people were disposable, and being disposable, that meant that creating things that went beyond their immediate scope wasn't really necessary. However, as Dungeons and Dragons developed, and other systems also developed, a more, I'm not going to say sophisticated, but a more involved audience and a more involved players. And with the inclusion of things like novels, for example, things like Dragonlance, which tied Dungeons and Dragons directly with an actual story, an actual novel that you could read and you could relate to the characters. Many people wanted to start to replicate that in their own game. Not just be the adventurer that goes and gets gold and comes back and gets richer and richer and richer, but they wanted to make their characters part of something bigger, of an actual story. And this is what we are going to be talking about in this video. The difference between having your PCs living in this little bubble and the opposite of that, having your PCs being part of the world they live in. And this advice goes mostly for dungeon masters, game masters, although players can get some ideas from these. It's not going to be like a concrete type of advice, which I usually give in this channel. It's going to be more of almost like an opinion, almost like an editorial kind of thing. As characters grow and grow in their world and do bigger adventures, they get bigger treasure and do greater things. It's hard for them to stay and remain in this little bubble that's only pivots around their own lives and not consider the fact that their actions, as they get bigger and bigger and bigger, affect the world, the rest of the world. And this is a detail that is very important to make a realistic world for the players. Again, if you are looking to make something story-like. One thing that we gotta make sure as game masters is to provide a world where their actions have consequences. And not only immediate consequences, not only if they save a town from an evil wizard or something like that, not only have that affect that little town, it should be that at some point if they travel somewhere else, they know about them. Oh, you were the guys that saved the town of so-and-so from the evil wizard. By doing this, players feel more important. They feel that their characters are not only these things that they play and do things and kill a monster or go to a tavern and get drunk. They realize their characters affect the world, that things change because of their actions, whether good or bad. And these actions are going to be noticed by people, good or bad. Opens up a lot of possibilities. It opens up role playing. It makes it more vital for the players to play their characters according to what they are. And another thing that kind of goes with this is having the world continue even if the characters are not directly involved in those events. This requires sort of planning and timekeeping, but you can keep it rather rough. And if you see my previous video, which I'm gonna put the link in the description, where I speak about game prep and I provide branches for every session, you can use those branches to determine events are gonna be happening in the world, so that if the characters take option A, so to speak, and they decide to do a certain thing, option B, which was a possible adventure, well, the events that related to option B will keep running. Things will keep happening. The world doesn't stop because the characters are not there. That in turn loops back, or can loop back, and affect their current adventure. Or it can affect things after they're done with that adventure and they return to find, hey, things have changed. In my game, one example is that they had at some point two options. They had to deliver this evil elf wizard to the Elven Kingdom because of a treaty between a human barony and the Elvendom. Do that, or investigate a keep in the north of their area where they suspected there was some activity going on with armies and goblins. My players decided to go north. However, the party that went south to get that evil wizard to the Elvendom, they did their thing. They went there, and what happened is that they got attacked, which is what I was planning for their adventure. So it happened anyway, but they were not there. And that situation changed the world for them and made them think about, wait a minute, there's some bigger things going on here than what we're doing. What is going on? So make use of the world, the actions of the players, and make use of the actions of other inhabitants of the world, governments, organizations, beasts, anything, and merge them, make them work together. Don't keep your players in this bubble where they do things and do things and do things, and the rest of the world is like nothing ever happened. I hope this helped you have a more cohesive world and a more involved players, which in the end makes the game even more fun for everybody, for you as a game master and for the players. So tell me, what do you do to keep your players involved? How do you manipulate the events of the world to keep your players engaged and keep things moving and make it seem realistic? Let me know in the comments. As always, if you like the content of the video, click the like button. If you like the content of the channel, feel free to subscribe. And until next time, keep those D20s rolling.